welcome to yet another edition of the Expressions with the New Indian Express. I have with me two very erudite gentlemen with long relationships with the US. Mr. Salman Taseed was Minister of External Affairs between 2012 and 2014. And those were the Obama-Biden years. And I believe he also did meet Vice President Biden when he visited India in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And we have Jay Panda, National Vice President and spokesperson of the BJP, who for 15 years was the head of the Indo-US Forum of Parliamentarians, the chairman. So he has had very close interactions with politicians from across the spectrum in the US, and in fact has also met Vice President Biden. And he studied in America as well at the Michigan Technology University. So thank you both of you for joining me. I have with me Mr. Chawla, whom both of you know very well, the editorial director of the New Indian Express. So I'd like to start with Mr. Khurshid right away. What was your experience of Vice President Biden? Mr. Khurshid, what was your experience of Vice President Biden?
Well, I must say that Vice President Biden was an interesting person, but in the presence of President Obama, you don't really notice anyone. President Obama's presence is so awe-inspiring, but he gave an impression that he was a kind of old-time American politician, comfortable, comforting, full of anecdotes, interesting, and good company. But as I said, it would have been wonderful if we had him on our own. But the presence of President Obama just turned all eyes towards one man, and therefore, in a sense, Vice President Biden was at a great disadvantage there. But I think that he is, since giving up the vice presidentship, I think he's come into his own, and the run up to the nomination has brought out, I believe, the best characteristics in the man. And you see something solid, you see something that connects very well with the past, you see something that's forward-looking and has the element of excitement that the Obama presidency brought. So I think it's like reliving that experience, of course, with someone who's much older.
Right. What is your? How do you think the Biden-Harris ticket will do compared to Trump and Pence?
Well, more than thinking of what it will do, there is a hope of what it will do. Yeah. A hope that it will get elected, and I think that's something that a whole lot of Indians would want to see happen. Not necessarily because of how things have turned out in the last 4 years for the United States within the country and how they've turned out for us, because in a sense, many of the in the feel that you get, I think, which is interesting, and that possibly more exciting and something more welcome in a team of Biden and Kamala Harris.
Right. Mr. Panda, may I bring you in here and talk a bit about how do you think the Biden-Harris ticket has energized the US elections 2020?
Well, first of all, I think I should clarify that as an Indian politician, I really cannot have an opinion as to who will be the next US president. That is the job of American voters to decide. India has had a very strong relationship, very fundamentally strong relationship with the US, and it's been bipartisan. The Biden-Harris nomination has led to the first ever virtual convention. We just saw that a day or so ago. And of course, it was a very different experience than what normally conventions are, which are very raucous and large gatherings in physical proximity. Now, as far as how this will do, I think for a while it had become obvious that he would pick Senator Harris because he had committed himself to picking a woman and later on a woman of color, I think. And Senator Harris was one of the most prominent of such names. So in a sense, it was sort of expected. On the other hand, the other side of the President Trump and Vice President Pence are also known commodities, having been in office for more than 3 years. It's going to go down to the last few weeks and the last few days. If you remember, 4 years ago, most of the opinion polls got it wrong in America. Now that was a bit unusual because in the US, traditionally opinion polls have had a much better degree of accuracy. So I would not get swayed by what the opinion polls are showing today. There's still some months to go for the election, and they have shown some up and down swing the last few months, if you notice. So I would wait and watch and see what the impact is over the next few weeks.
What was your experience of Vice President Biden?
I've met him a couple of times, including when he was senator, not vice president. And I had the pleasure of having a small breakfast with just 5 or 6 people with him. And I agree with Salman that he is a classical, old-fashioned American politician. You know, he's been around for many, many terms in the Senate for many decades. And so, as politicians sometimes do, in off-the-record conversations, they can be quite, shall we say, candid. So he is, in fact, Vice President Biden has a record of sometimes being a bit too candid on air also. I can say that it was a very interesting meeting.
Did you get a sense of how he views India?
Look, let me be very clear. I think India is important to any national candidate in the US. I've seen this experience 20 years ago. Indians started playing a role in terms of more and more Indian Americans becoming staff members of congressmen and women and senators and in the White House, and then elected officials in Congress and Senate now. So the importance of the Indian American community has mattered hugely. They're also a very wealthy community and they are political contributors. So both sides woo them a lot. And finally, the way geopolitics is playing out over the last, certainly in this century, over the last 2 decades, India is clearly on its way to becoming the 3rd largest economy in the world. And the way China has stepped on many toes, including on America's and many other nations in its neighborhood, I think there is a great sense of warmth and of fondness for India across the American political spectrum. And this, as I said earlier, is helped by the Indian American community who are viewed as good citizens, as contributors to America. And I think that helps a lot.
Right. Mr. Kashmir, may I ask you, how do you see the Indian American vote playing out in this election? Because President Trump has, of course, been wooing them constantly over the past few years. And we also saw the 2 huge rallies, one in Houston and one in Ahmedabad. How do you see that vote playing out?
Well, I think that one has to understand that he's got his own solid backing from different communities, and he's done quite well with the overseas Indian community. There is no doubt about that. But what one senses is an excitement about a person who is a woman, who is charismatic, who has a very strong Indian flavor and Indian connect. The fact that stories travel from India, her relatives in India, etc., and how her own life has been presented to the American people, I am quite sure that that there's going to be a huge pull of the overseas Indian vote towards her. I believe is inevitable. And it'll be disappointing, of course, if she can't do it, because she has all the makings of a person who draws this vote. Now, but you can't just, obviously, you can't just simply think that every vote that President Trump controls is going to slip away. I don't think that's an obvious thing, because he has a very strong connect with the people who voted for him. And I assume that he would have retained a lot of that, despite the difficulties that the country and the governance of the country has faced in the last few months.
But her politics may be somewhat uncomfortable to the current dispensation in India, and I think they've expressed that sort of view that she may her stand on certain issues are not necessarily in congruence with the way India sees the world. And it's
well, see, when you talk about perceptions of India, please look on this screen. The perceptions of India that's ruled today is ruled by people like Mr. Panda, who's sitting there. And I see nothing wrong with that at all. I think that's a wonderful face of India. So people have opinions.
That's a
people
rare bipartisan vote, Mr. Panda. I hope you're happy about that.
Well, my friend Salman Khurshid has not been one of India's top diplomats as a minister for nothing.
See, whatever we are looking forward to in the American elections, and whatever we are looking forward to in terms of transformation to American foreign policy, is going to come much later. I think what is important really is this connect that there is amongst some people, even if we don't meet all the time and we are not backslapping all the time. But when we sit across as we do today, you get that feel. This is an important connect, and what we would seek and hope from the outcomes in the United States of America will be something that pleases Jay Panda and Salman Khurshid, both of us. That's what we will be looking for. And I can't see Jay Panda disagreeing with that.
Let me get in, Kaveri, here,
Sure.
because I'm trying to understand who is for whom, because both are speaking in a different language altogether. Though Salman is quite frank that he's saying, okay, I hope he will win. But I can see something wrong, because Jay also was saying opinion polls don't matter. Obviously, he's saying if opinion polls are predicting Biden's victory now, they may change little later, because last time it happened like this. He wishes, obviously, this is my interpretation, I will be wrong, that he would like Trump back in office. That is my interpretation. You can contradict me, but the way you put it, it's very clear. But what I'm talking about is very interesting. Both of you have to tell, it seems that elections being held in America in the name of an Indian American, though I am looking at the various biodata which is presented, Indian American, she has been recovered an Indian identity now and recently. Earlier she was known more as African Indian. Now I'm talking identity politics, which was known to us only in this part of India, has becoming more pronounced in America, where votes are being sought. And you are also talking about she would be able to help Biden to win, rather than Biden, a normally presidential candidate like Obama, makes that roommate, that teammate to become the vice president. It is reverse is happening first time in American history, that a woman is leading the presidential election. I'm asking both of you.
Well, I think that this is you put your finger on something that is obviously very important. It's not something that any presidential person would be very happy to have a vice president who is more popular than him or her, or a vice president who is the driving force. But then we come across newer models of governance from time to time, and maybe this is such a model. Americans often look at the vice president as a possibility for the future of what the president might be, and so on and so forth. And yet there is always this, the presidential, vice presidential ticket is a very bonding thing. And if you see the speeches that have been made, it's seldom that you see politicians bond how beautifully these two have bonded. And therefore, I suppose one can wish them well. As Jay Panda said, it's their election, it's not our election. But we can certainly take a ringside seat and do some clapping and do some whistling from time to time, depending on what we think the outcome will bring for all of us. But the United States of America and the US and India's relationship is going to be of a very significant nature in the years to come. And therefore, who leads United States of America and their perception of both India and the world is going to be very important for us. And I dare say that it will be the same for them when we get to our elections. But our elections are usually a one-man election. They have a ticket election of two people. So that's the difference.
No, Jay, I will ask you one question. Who would you like to see? Whether you would like to see Trump back in office or not? What are your experience with Obama versus Trump now? You have dealt with both of them. And what do you think is good for India?
So let's be very clear. I was not implying anything when I talked about the opinion polls. I'll come back to that in a minute. The fact is, my party leader, Prime Minister of the nation, Modi ji, has worked with both presidents. Obama, when he was president, was a Democrat, and Trump is a Republican. And we will have to have an attitude of bipartisanship, because we will have to deal with whoever is in government there. Now, of course, let's recognize something. Whether it is President Trump or it is Vice President Biden who becomes President Biden, they will primarily look out for America's interests, which is natural. Now, we should not just expect that just because one of the vice presidential candidates is half Indian, that somehow Indian priorities will be more than American priorities. That will not happen. By the way, there has been a woman who has led the presidential ticket earlier. Let's not forget Hillary Clinton. Just last time around, 4 years ago, she was leading the Democratic ticket. So to take this a little bit forward, not just has Prime Minister Modi dealt with two opposite party presidents, but these big events that he has had with the Indian diaspora, which has galvanized them, both in Houston as well as here in India. It just so happens that it happened when President Trump was the president, and so he shared center stage. But when he was
it never happened with any president in the past. No Prime Minister of India, no President of the United States has such a bonding where they're holding a public meeting, which is more political, because you're holding a meeting on the eve of election in United States, and 1 year they have election going. You're basically endorsing, you're raising the hand.
Let's keep in mind, it was a bipartisan show. On the stage were something like 20 American elected officials, senators, congressmen, and from both parties, from both Democratic and Republican parties. And when President came here on a state visit, President Trump came here on a state visit. So naturally, that's different. So look, India is committed to working with whoever. But let's just take a moment on how the geopolitics is playing out. We know that despite improving relationship between India and America for some years now, and especially under Prime Minister Modi, I would say, the American administrations always have blackmailed by certain, for their presence in Afghanistan has been used as a leverage by Pakistan, which controls physical access. Now, increasingly, American forces are going out of Afghanistan. It has different impacts on geopolitics, on what the Taliban will do, etc. But it also means there is less leverage for Pakistan to use on America to do irrational things here. So I think this is irrespective of whoever is going to be president, but President Trump has accelerated the process of reducing the forces there. And one more thing about opinion polls. Remember, in the last 6 months, US opinion polls 6 months ago showed President Trump in a very comfortable position because their economy was doing very well. Then post-COVID, they have shown him trailing. But recently, just 3 days ago, there was a very interesting poll by CNN. Now, CNN is normally viewed as very anti-Trump. It's normally viewed as more sympathetic to the Democrats. CNN, which used to show 11-point lead for the Biden-Harris ticket, now shows a 4-point lead just in 3 days ago. So there are some dramatic changes taking place. We should hold our horses, and we have to see which way it plays out.
Again, you are not admitting, but you are saying it's bipartisan, whatever. In a way, you are again indicating, okay, lead is coming down, therefore likelihood of. I asked you specifically.
I'm just stating facts.
I'm asking you one question. Is Trump, you want Trump to return or not? Will he be better for India In terms, I'm taking India-specific question. You are talking about geopolitics. You have been president of Indo-US, whatever parliamentary forum. But I'm asking you as a political question because you are bonding BJP bonding with Trump and the social media of your all people. I can see from the Twitter and Facebook, they all want him to win again. As the office bearer of the party, you may be constrained by limitations. I know.
As not just an office bearer of my party, but any Indian public person, any Indian politician should not have a public view on this, because we have a bilateral relationship that, as I said, it is truly bipartisan. We, Modi ji had the same kind of bonding with President Obama. It was just not an election year. And so there were not these kind of events. Now that we are heading into elections, it seems that way. We will deal with whoever is in government there. As Salman was pointing out, that many people want to see Biden and Harris win. If you follow social media, you're right. Many Indians are saying that it should be Trump and that he's good for India. So Indian citizens are allowed to have their views. There's no problem there. But
I'll ask a question. I'll stop you here. I'll ask a question, Salman. That Kamala Harris statement in the house there that tell Kashmiris that they are not alone. We are with them. How do you support that kind of ticket where they are talking openly supporting Kashmir and separatists, what you want to call them, or whatever you want to call them? You expect that, okay, they should win and they will be good.
We've seen this kind of thing a lot in the past. People have to be more attentive to Indian interests, and when they get into office, by the exposure that they have and the extent of analysis that's provided before them, they moderate their views. I think that we can expect from her, as being part of the entire establishment, expect from her a great deal of understanding and a great deal of sensitivity towards the Indian position. But I think that when they go into battle in what is not our territory, which is American territory, both intellectually and physically, there are a lot of influences that work on them, and a lot of their own experience of growing up where they have grown up. All that matters. And she has a strong human rights position, and therefore she would have a constituency that she responds to. But I am quite confident, whoever it is, whichever American president it is or a vice president it is, that they will, even if they've had positions or perceptions that don't make us entirely comfortable, I think at the end of the day, I don't believe that there will be great divergence of views between what the Indian perception is and what their perception will be. I think those days are gone when Pakistan was hyphenated with us. Those days are gone. Those days are gone when somebody will have to choose between them and us, etc. I think it's America number one, but abroad it's India number one is the attitude it will be. And I hope to see that happen in either case, whatever the outcome of the government of the election is.
But China is becoming more important now. No? Look at the position which Trump has taken against China, and Biden's background, if you look at what he has been talking about China. There is a contradiction. There is a conflicting view on China as well.
So of course, the China thing is very important. I think any American politician has to understand, as most American experts often show that they don't understand, that China, we will deal on our terms. We will not deal with China in terms of what Americans want us to do. We will deal with China on our own terms, and that is very important for Americans to appreciate and understand. We can't just click our heels and follow them in the Indian Ocean and in the Indo-Pacific, and as well by encircling China and so on. I believe our China policy has to be far more integrated, far more sophisticated, and far more intelligent than people want it to be. So I think on China, there is definitely scope for enormous amount of discussion with anybody on the US side.
Yeah.
Prabhu,
Yeah, please.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, you referred to Senator Harris's comments about Jammu and Kashmir, and of course, those will be of concern to any Indian administration, not just this dispensation as Kaveri was earlier mentioning, but I think she has also issued further comments and both Vice President Biden and she have also reiterated their commitment to the relationship, bilateral relationship with India. We should keep that in mind. And also Senator Harris
That's election opportunism. Now, when the election comes, vote seeking, then you start changing your position.
No, but
you do it here, they do there.
You're right. Senator Harris has shown pragmatism on her views on other issues as well, on the US economy, on other issues. She has shown pragmatism compared to what she had said earlier.
Only human rights also, what she was doing in California when people were being killed and they were in jail, minorities, she didn't fight as Attorney General, she was not fighting their cases. Now she has become liberal and she's trying to take the votes of minority.
So that's a domestic matter of the US.
So what you are saying you are using as a justification that she has changed her views. Obviously, she wants Indian American votes. Therefore, she has to change the views, isn't it?
So Indian American views with 1.2 million voters are not going to change the election in the US. They matter much more in terms of funds, donations, as well as the activity.
I'll stop you. I'll stop you. Are you saying that the American politicians are looking for Indian money and not mind?
No, the Indian vote as a percentage of votes of many communities in America are still relatively small at only about little over 1 million. But the Indian clout in terms of not just money, but in terms of political activism, in terms of having positions in the administration and in Senate, etc., is much more important. But one more quick thing about China. You are very right, Prabhu, because the way China, the attitudes towards China is shaping up. Now, our view about China is not that we have to ally with America to check it. We have to look out for our own interests. But the fact is, changing attitudes in America about China do help us. They do help India. And also there is a movement of 4 or 5 important democracies working together in the Indo-Pacific. America, India, Australia, Japan particularly, doing naval exercises is a good thing for the world.
How do you see the global politics of America changing if Biden and Harris come to power? Because under Trump, it's been disruptive rather than constructive. Whether it's Europe or whether it's Asia, it's been more personality driven rather than structural. How do you see that changing under Biden and Harris? Will it go back to the Obama years? Will it be more of the same?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
All right. So I think, President Trump is a unique personality, but I think we should distinguish what he says, and he often says very interesting things on Twitter. But what he does is very important. Just last week, the deal between UAE and Israel is historic, and the strong actions he has taken against China. You must admit that this was being talked about in America over several administrations, but it must take a lot of guts to stand up to China, which owns $1 trillion of US Treasury bills, and to take these tough decisions, which we know from an Indian experience is that nobody was standing up to China. The way China is bullying Australia, the way it is bullying Japan and Vietnam, President Trump has stood up. Now, how a Biden administration or a potential Biden administration would deal with that, they have made a few comments. I think we need to hear more.
Right. Mr. Khurshid, what do you see? How do you see the world changing and America's role in it changing? Should there be a Biden-Harris presidency?
Well, I think it's inevitable, and they've indicated already that the American foreign policy will go through a fundamental modification. We often think of Democrats and Republicans as being poles apart as far as foreign policy is concerned. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, you might find that the outcomes are not entirely different, no matter who's in power. But I think the manner in which the United States will deal with its allies, the way the United States will deal with multilateral agencies, issues like climate change, these are all matters on which there would be a significant change in foreign policy in case the Republicans gave way to the Democrats. I think there would be. It's inevitable. But that's not to say that every part of American foreign policy is going to be altered. There will be certain parts that perhaps will not be altered because there is, after all, the president changes, but the State Department doesn't change with the same alacrity. And that sort of continues for a fairly long time. But certainly you will see a significant difference in foreign policy in case President Trump does not come back for a second term, and the new challengers come back and be the next president and vice president.
Would you agree with Mr. Panda when he says that President Trump has actually indeed, stood up to China and done things that were very difficult in previous regimes, that were talked of and not done?
Well, I think all these things take a time to register.
Right.
To begin with, it seems, yes, that he's taken a very strong position on China. But I'm not quite sure that he takes a strong position on China and holds it through to a point where we need him to be around when things go wrong with China. But it'll take some time. It'll take some time before we know exactly where we go. There is a feeling that he's impulsive. There is a feeling that he is opinionated. Now, if that's true, it can have both an advantage and a disadvantage. But to have a person that you can reason with, a person with whom you can have a conversation and who you can hope to convert to a point of view that he or she may not have started with, I think is an important thing for democracy. And if we see more of that in the United States of America, both inside the United States of America and indeed in the manner in which they deal with people and friends and allies and other people across the globe, that would be helpful. I think helpful for everyone who supports democracy.
Let me ask both of you one simple question. Kaveri, let me ask, because we have little time left now. I will ask both of them one by one question. If this Democratic ticket wins, what kind of changes do you expect vis-a-vis India in terms of economic and in terms of sociology, in terms of politics? Jay, you tell me first, because you will be affected.
Okay, first let me make a point here that no matter how close we have become to America, we will always have differences.
Not to America, to Trump.
No, let me come to that. So we will always have differences. It's okay for friends to have differences, as long as we have a larger connectivity, fundamental shared values.
That's the perception I'm saying. That's the
no, but let me just say, we had differences with Obama administration. We also have some differences with the Trump administration. You know, trade issues are still being discussed, and we have synergies with both. So now, if there is a Biden presidency, and as Salman was saying, if there is a dramatic change in foreign policy, it would depend on which kind of dramatic change. So, for example, President Trump has taken a tough stand, not just on China, but also on the United Nations. And our experience with the United Nations is that it has become outdated. It does not give permanent representation to a country like India on the Security Council. It allows some permanent members of the Security Council to shield rogue nations and to shield terrorists from being designated. So we like the fact that an American administration is tough with the United Nations. So how would a potential President Biden deal with that will matter to us. Now, I can't imagine President Biden would want to undo the deal between UAE and Israel, which I think is a good thing for Middle East.
I'm asking India, vis-a-vis India, Jay, I want to be very specific because we are talking as an Indian journalist. I want to know from you, what kind of changes do you think would happen or now not happen?
So I don't want to speculate, because it depends on so many factors. We have had Democratic administrations with we have had a great meeting of minds. We have had Republican administrations with whom we have had a great meeting of minds, and there will always be some differences. So it depends. I don't think he's a very seasoned politician. If he were to become president, I don't think he would do drastic things to hurt the relationship with India because of the various reasons I have already given. But we'd have to see what the changes might be.
Salman.
Well, I think that there's always hope in change, right? I mean, I know that we don't change as quickly as other countries do. In the United States of America, 4 years is a long time. For us, 4 years is a very short time. Eight years is all there is in terms of the life of a president. 8 years is just a beginning here. We are always saying in 8 years, saying we've only been here 8 years. How much do you expect us to do? But the fact that there will be fundamental change in the manner in which the administration works, not just Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, also Mr. Trump and the rest of the Republicans. There could have been another Republican president, and you would have had a different kind of governance model in the United States of America. So let us say that whatever things are, and we have reasons to be satisfied with many things that have happened. We have, as Jay said, we always will have some issues, even with the greatest of our friends, etc. And we've always had those as far as the United States is concerned. But if there is a change, maybe something new, something interesting, something more exciting will happen. So since it's not our government, there's a change. It doesn't really matter on the negative side. On the positive side, there is a chance to look at what may happen. On the other hand, there's always something about the devil you know and the devil you don't. So somebody you worked with, somebody you figured out what your relationship with is, you could go ahead and do another 4 years with that person. So there's a little bit of good on both sides. Now let's see what the Americans think about it.
Well, I'm saying this because, Jay, for you, I'm just trying to figure out, because selection of Kamala Harris over Tulsi Gabbard, it's interesting because she was running mate. She almost got 2 nomination tickets also to the party convention. And the first time that he chose a woman who was not represented that much, he withdrew from the candidacy much earlier than Tulsi did. And after that, Tulsi was not even allowed to speak at the convention, breaking all the previous convention where the person who gets the nomination to tickets to the convention is allowed to speak. Tulsi was even not given that invitation. That reflects the kind of priority Kamala Harris politics will get in the United States.
Now you want to take the words out of my mouth. You want to take the words out of my mouth and finally put my money where my mouth is. See, there is. I'm sitting here with 2 hats. One is a personal hat, and on personal hat, my God, there is very little that can hold me back to say that's a wonderful candidate. That's a wonderful candidate we must support. But then when I speak to you, I speak also on behalf of our whole country. And therefore, what I say should not be out of sync completely with how we have to think as a country, as a responsible government or a responsible public figures, etc. And there, one might be a little more cautious and careful. But in personal terms, I would endorse her very strongly, no problem. The team very strongly, no problem at all.
Yeah, Prabhu, on that question, I've met Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard many times, and she's indeed a very impressive lady. She's very charismatic, has served in their armed forces. She's the first Hindu woman in Congress in America. Now, for whatever reason, as a Democrat, it seems that she has problems with the Democratic leadership. It was apparent during the early stages of the debates in the Democratic primaries. So, what might have been if she had had a bigger role is a different issue. I don't know Senator Harris except from the public records, and we have already discussed that. And so that's a matter for the Democratic Party and their rules.
If you are going into personalities, I am going to policies. Both the women represent ideology of the Democratic Party. The question is, she is also Democrat. She is also committed to the United States of America as a soldier of the country. She may be Hindu by religion, but she is more American than being Hindu. Here you have got Kamala Harris. She never claimed to be Hindu in the past. I'm not getting into Hindu versus Christian or Muslim. I'm just getting into that there is some kind of, because she was even denied the opportunity to speak at the convention. That means anti-India stand is obviously very dominant in the thinking. Don't you think that it will be some kind of a influencing factor while dealing with India in future when the Vice President Kamala Harris comes to India?
So I think you have seen in the Democratic Party today, whereas Vice President Biden represents an old-fashioned center-left type of Democrat, there are many, such as Senator Bernie Sanders, who are considered far left, and Senator Harris is probably somewhere in between. So it's not a unified front that we are seeing. There are many different pressure groups within the party that are being accommodated. But the same thing you can say for the Republicans, because there are many traditional Republicans who are not in sync with what President Trump has been doing. So both the parties have been evolving in different ways. And either way, whoever comes to power finally will represent the unified viewpoints of his or her party and nation, and that's what we'll have to deal with.
Great. I think we've had a very interesting discussion. Prabhu, any last question?
They have not answered who is good for India. They have not answered. That's the question I'm looking for.
Prime Minister Modi is good for India.
They are given their impression that they like who likes whom. That is very obvious. That Jayapada would like Trump to win, and Mr. Salman, my friend, would like other party to win. So therefore, they are obvious, but they don't want to speak in public. Obviously, that is obvious.
There is secret voting principle. So you can't disclose.
But the question is, now the Democrat Party doesn't want secret voting. They want in email voting only. They don't want public.
I was very tempted to respond to Salman's comment that there is only one man in India as opposed to two-person ticket, but I'll let it be.
No, please. The temptation.
I'll say, Salman, if your party was not so committed also to the one-man principle in your party, it would have done better.
Well, thank you. We'll have another discussion when the Indian election comes.
Gentlemen, and we come back to you, I hope, after the results, and then you can actually make your views, you can make them far clearer than you were today. I understand why you have to hedge your bets, of course. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chawla. Thank you, Mr. Panna. Thank you, Mr. Khurshid.
Thank you.